Good morning, everyone. I thought that I would begin by saying a little about the new Founders Award, and I will read the terms of reference as approved by the Council. The Founders Award, the Founders Lecture, was established by the Society for Scientific Exploration in the name of those whose vision and energy has led by now to more than 3 decades of highly successful meetings, publications, and other ventures. This lecture is intended to recognize outstanding contributions to the furtherance of the aims of the Society. And now, compared with the Dinsdale, whereas the Society's Dinsdale Award honors specifically intellectual and research achievements, the Founders Lecture, given in alternate years, may acknowledge also the vital contributions that can be made by building bridges to mainstream researchers, audiences, and media, either individually or through institutional or public activities. Well, Bob Jahn had a life before SSE, before he was in the gleam in his eye. Starting in 1962, Bob was professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at Princeton University, and he founded the Electric Propulsion and Plasma Dynamics Laboratory there. Bob served as Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Science from 1971 to 1986. With Brenda Dunn, another long-term officer, Bob founded the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, otherwise known as the PEAR Lab, in 1979. It continued until 2007, 28 years of excellent research. Bob is now chairman of the board of the International Consciousness Research Laboratories, ICRL. Now I want to say how I met Bob. I was a professor working in plasma physics at Stanford 30 years ago, and there would be seminars given once or twice a week, and the mechanical engineering department there would have a regular weekly seminar, and there were 1 or 2 given by a visiting scholar named Robert Jahn. However, in March of 1978, I was astonished to read that he planned to present a seminar with the following title: Psychic Processes, Energy Transfer, and Things That Go Bump in the Night. That got my attention. And that was my introduction to Bob Jahn. He was doing good work on psychic phenomena even then. He was doing research that science journals would not publish. That rang a bell for me. I was doing research on UFOs and similar topics that science journals would not publish. So we found we had a common problem, which we discussed extensively. And what to do about it? Well, obviously, we needed a journal. And the question was, how do you set up a journal? Do you use a one-man band, a committee? And we decided the best way was to have a society and leave it to the society to organize the journal, which happened all in due course. Well, Bob has served on the council, as we've heard, for almost the entire lifetime of the society. First the council, then for 20 years as vice president. So it's a pleasure and honor to present the first Founders Award to our long-term member, officer, mentor, and friend, Bob Jahn.
Thank you.
Every bit.
Yeah, good, yeah. Well, here we are, yet again. And I can't tell you how pleased I am to be at this position one more time. I'm sure many of you have suffered through a variety of presentations from our pair group and subsequent organizations. We have spoken with you primarily about our research, and properly so. We have given a number of papers on our human-machine anomalies research, both the empirical aspects thereof and the theoretical and analytical aspects thereof. But we've also presented a variety of talks by our students and interns directed toward their work, and had the benefit of good comments and helpful suggestions from you all. But most to be recalled is the sequence of presentations of my dearest colleague, Brenda Dunn, who, on a number of occasions, has charmed us all with her remarkable treatments of remote perception research. And I need to make it clear at the outset that this is every bit as much a joint presentation from the two of us as it is me cluttering up the rostrum. I will invoke a number of metaphors as this chat goes forward. As many of you are aware, Brenda and I are great opera fans, and one of her favorite operas, one of the major works of Richard Wagner, is called Lohengrin. It's a rather fantastic tale drawn from early times about a noble knight of the mystical realm who is sent to save the reputation and indeed the life of a young lady who has been falsely accused by a malevolent character. Her name is Elsa, and the malevolent character's name is Ortrud. And Ortrud does her worst to impoverish the reputation of Elsa. But to the rescue comes the knight of the mystical realm named Lohengrin, who, other than his name at the start, is simply not recognized by the body of other players. He does, however, arrive in a remarkable fashion, namely riding on a huge white swan who sings onto the stage and allows the shiny knight to deal with the situation. And the only constraint that the knight imposes on the entourage, and in particular on Elsa, is that whereas he is perfectly willing to take her as a wife, as part of the payment of service for this rather substantial benefit, but he cannot be challenged as to his name or as to his associations beyond that. This gives Ortrud, the heavy on the story, the opportunity to finagle temptation into Elsa's situation until she finally breaks down and asks how this to-be husband expects her to tolerate, not knowing what his name is or what his role is. And he is reluctantly forced to reveal his personality, after which the swan mysteriously disappears and he sails off on the back thereof, never to be seen here again. Now, what is relevant here is that A, I have no swan, and B, I wouldn't ride on one if I had one. And, but nonetheless, this whole episode is culminated in what has come to be known as a swan song, namely his last presentation to the organization, coming to the point, finally, I am giving you herein my version of a swan song. I compliment you on your help through the years and my thanks for all you have done for me. That lengthy introduction done, I will now get on with things. What is a founder's lecture? That's the first question we have to deal with. I was pleased and honored to be offered this opportunity to deliver the first swan song, the first founder's lecture. But it left me with a few questions. Was this to be the last lecture of everybody who enjoys the opportunity later on? Was it to be an honorific thing? Was it to be an informative, professional documentation? What is founder's lecture? Turned out no one else seemed to know either, including the person who coined the term and appropriated the event. So what does any good society do when it's confronted with a problem of this sort? It appoints a committee. And we indeed had a committee that attempted to determine what the founders actually promoted. I think it's fair to say it failed nobly. So that leaves the choice sort of in me and I will have to do something with it, at least for this occasion. First thing I have to do is get my notes in order. My guess is that what Bill had in mind, although he can correct me if he wishes, that it was going to be sort of a smorgasbord, an opportunity to talk a little bit of history, a little bit of the principles of the society, a little bit of the status of the society, its success to date, its failures to date, and a little bit of anything else the speaker wanted to throw in. That's all right. I can play by those rules. I don't have to do much about history because we have a fine set of bylaws. We have a fine set of other guidelines in the society, a charter, a constitution. We're well equipped with the boilerplate. And I'm presuming that you've all studied in great depth those documents. We also have a clear set of founders, and one can name them, label them, and talk a bit about their history. You've met the primary founder already and many times before. The incomparable Peter Sturrock has his name and style all over this organization. And in my mind, there are actually no reason to contest that the organization was conceived, founded, and indeed survives well to this date because of Peter and his role. But there were others. You know most of them. A lot of them have served with our officers. Incomparable Henry Bauer is going to speak better than I when I get done rambling on. We're going to have reference to Larry Frederick, who served for many years as secretary of the organization. Some have gone on. Ian Stevenson has done You Need Me. And really established the work on life after death, call it what you will, at the University of Virginia, but we have had many others. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of dropouts of the founders of the society. Many of the founders in the beginning were understandably drawn from the astrophysical, astronomical domain. A lot of them at Cornell. You have heard of many of those. Tommy Gold. We have had the likes of Carl Sagan, many who have just become disinterested pretty much in what we do, and they are part of our history, but that's it. Unfortunately, there have been other more destructive participants drawn from the critical communities. You are all quite aware of most of them. I'm not even going to distinguish them by name, with the exception of mentioning Marcello Truzzi, who in the earlier days was really one of the most supportive and creative scholars to the work of this organization. I'm also not going to read to you, unless someone really demands it, the charter or the bylaws or the constitution of the society. You have it available here. I think there are copies around you can read, so we'll pass by that. What we really need to get to is what has society become, what has it done well, and what has it not done well. We have heard already from Bill about this connections business, and it has been a topic that has prepossessed Brenda and myself from the beginning. The importance of making the connections, the importance of one arena of anomalies, interest, raising the understanding of another. I guess this is as good a time as any to see this cartoon. Can you get this up? This is a rather famous one that has appeared. All right, here's a chap in the first part of the puzzle who is just bemusing how the pieces of the issue fit together. He's got a veritable jigsaw puzzle of strange stuff that needs to be dealt with. And so he sets to work putting pieces together, making connections. And he keeps going through various phases of this, finally arriving down here in the fifth or sixth panel with what he thinks is an accomplishment of completion of this intellectual puzzle, when to his bemusement on the horizon appear a batch of other pieces of puzzles with other investigators standing bemused upon them, now drifting toward him. And this, I think, was our image from the beginning, that everyone would bring to bear their interest, what they may have been localized in a particular category of anomaly, but they were going to draw great insight, great accomplishment, only when they began to relate to the other people who were working in anomalistic phenomena. This is why we combined UFO people with psychokinetic people, with remote perception people, with biophysical anomalies people, not to have a breadth for its own sake, but to have the opportunity to benefit from the interactions, have the benefit to understand what the work in UFOs can add to inform the work of the others. And I still will maintain that that's the most important part of the work of this society. Not that it just collects a lot of people carrying on in their own particular context, but people that can help and connect with others from their particular interest in these things. The point was understood very well by the editors of this journal of Science and Healing, which I'm sure now called Explore. And on an occasion not too far in the past, they took an entire special issue and addressed it to, and I quote, the pertinence of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Pair Laboratory to the pursuit of global health. Global health. How much of that is going on in this research organization? Some of the most receptive audiences we have had have been organizations closely tied to health and to global health in particular, who are able to see of their own experiences with the anomalies of health practice, the relevance of what we were doing. This was connections of the form we wanted to have it. I hope that we will continue to take seriously the keynote that Bill has established for this meeting, the pertinence of what A is doing to what B is doing, to what C is doing in this society's context, that we learn from each other, although the fields are quite different. Now, getting back to the point, my conclusion, and I'm in full support of that motif, that I'm not sure we're quite ready to it. We can have meetings, we can have connections, but do we have the science? Do we have the intellectual attitude that permits us to benefit from these connections? Do we need a connection science or a connection physics? Has anybody possibly thought about that? I remember early in the days of my deanship at Princeton, many years ago, we had a very distinguished member of the Bell Telephone Laboratory. I will not mention his name in this context, but come to talk about, and this was early on, talk about these interactions and the importance of having systems work, systems scholarship in the academic context. It's all very well to have these cathedral towers of physics, of chemistry, of mechanical engineering, name what you will, pursuing it at a great rate for their own sake. But what was missing was the ability to talk to one another. Not just to be aware, but the ability to talk, to do systems engineering, which was what the goal was to become. But systems science and systems engineering, I remember arguing with Bill about this. It was Bill Baker, as I'm sure you understand, to say, look, You can't have systems engineering until you have a systems science. You have to have the mechanics. You have to have the vocabulary. You have to have the assortment of experience to do systems engineering by having systems science. What is the science of connections? That, I think, would be the next and noble question. Not that we just talk, but that we do in the context of connections. We have tried our own quiet way to deal with this. We have had our entrance efforts. We have written about our results. We have written about our deductions. We have written about all of the metaphysical implications. But this goes no further than the guy who picks up the paper and reads it. Where we have, I think, have benefited the most is having people like yourselves visit our laboratory, sit on our couches, and talk and understand the connections. Understand that what you just found that is strange to you, is anomalous effect, is very metaphorically akin to what we do. And we benefit from the vocabulary commonalities. We benefit from the results that appear in different labels in our disparate programs. I am rambling a little bit my time. Do you have a... Okay, fine. I will finish on time. But what's missing? Bill and his people have been bugging me for a few days for a title for this thing. My response was, make it what you will. I'll talk about a lot of stuff. But if I had to pick a title, I would have said something that emerged from the connections business. What are we doing wrong? We've done a lot of things right. We've got a lot of people here in this meeting, but what have we not done very well? I think you need only look around this room to tell what we're not doing well. That is, we are not preparing the next generation well. We are not getting the succession done right. Who are the next generation of founders going to be? Peter is going to retire, if he hasn't already. Bob is retiring. Brenda's retiring. The old guard is passing by in review. Where are the young people? Where are these people that have the new ideas? These are not people that require simply replication of our old founders' work. We need the new ideas. We need the implications transferred from the old founders to the new founders and to get on with that. And we're not doing that well. Why? Where is the educational system? to undergird it. Where can young people go to learn what the old people learned and put different labels on it? Or is this going to be done in our public school system? No, I don't think so. Is it going to be done in our churches and synagogues and religious organizations? Not anything there I'm hearing that's going to provide the fundamental conceptual education for the young people. Brenda did see this. She has tried valiantly to raise up the grassroots, to raise up the new people, the new founders. Hasn't worked. Hasn't worked worth the darn. The pizza and pop organizations once a year for a couple of hours, if that, at an SSE meeting, does not qualify as education. What can we do with our experience as the old founders to generate a viable group of new founders? Because without that, we will not prevail into the future. I ask you to think about that as I leave office, as Peter leaves office, as the old guard seated around this room leaves office. That should be our dominant concern now. That is what we have not done well. We have not prepared a viable, vigorous foundation. I hope you will take that charge seriously if you want to pay any honor to what the founders of this organization went through to get it to this level of viability. It would be to work on that one. And we would welcome the opportunity to sit around on a cracker barrel and tell the old stories about it, insofar as they had anything at all to do with the future. But we do need the future founders. And to get future founders, we have to get education. We have to get viable educators. We have to have a format that inculcates this spirit on into this future. That is the honor that most of us would like as we move out. So my swan is waiting out in the corridor, and I'm about to climb on it, and I will look back on occasion to see what this organization has done with its charter and with its bylaws, all of which were wonderful, to preserve them into a new spirit, a new category of members, a new category of participants on into the future. In the academic world, it's all too common that at graduation time, they have, among other parts of the celebration, some poor kid who stands up and gives a Latin salutatory address. I've suffered through 40 of them at Princeton. And they all end with the same phrase. You remember it? Validate atque ornate. Farewell and honor. So I wish to all of you, marvelous as you've been, that we now can go forward with a new greeting, a new honor, and new founders that preserve the majesty and the importance of this organization. Thank you for hearing me.
I'd just like to endorse Bob's comments with an observation. Many years ago, a friend of mine who followed politics more closely than I did observed that it was a sign that the Soviet Union was moribund, that in the Politburo, the Young Turks were in their 50s. This was somewhat prescient, since it was observed only a few years before that nation-state collapsed. Well, I've been active in the society for over 2 decades now. I've been serving on the council. I am now 54 years old, and I'm still one of the Young Turks on the council. So I hope this is not a presage of collapse, and that we will get our act together in the manner Bob has encouraged us to do.
Hello, I'm Ron Westrom. I was also here at the beginning of the society, and I remember probably that the strongest motivation for creating the SSE was psychop. And I still remember Trutzi and I basically yelling at each other about what was going on, how could we tolerate this, we couldn't let this go on, and so forth. And it was, I forget exactly who wrote the first letter. It may well have been you, Bob. But that when we discovered that there was a new society being put together and that we might be members of it and so forth, we were absolutely overjoyed. And but I certainly recall the tremendous stress on Trutzi, for instance, who had been a member of psychop himself and was shocked when he discovered that it was not, in fact, to be a dispassionate exploration of the paranormal, but in fact an organization designed to suppress research on the paranormal. So I think that was certainly on the minds of all of us. I think I do remember some of the letters that Bob wrote, which I thought were the most courageous, wanting to go forward with something like the Society for the Study of Anomalies. I forget what the exact phrasing was and so forth. But it was really absolutely salutary to realize that, yes, now we were going to have a research group where research was going to be the focus and not some sort of paranormal bashing and so forth. I just want to say that.
Bob, I wanted to pick up on your talk or mention of system science. I'm basically a system engineer, and my real skill is seeing connections. If people are familiar with system engineering, and I practice it at a pretty high level, Defense Department and in large industrial organizations doing work for defense. And there's two parts of it. The one that's taught in school is I call the system accounting, how to make sure everything comes together, follow requirements. But the part about system connection really resonated with me when you said that, because that turned out to be my talent. And I could talk to some people if you want to later about it. We have these talents that we make into strengths by practicing. And my talent turned out to be system connections, seeing them and how it weaves together for a big story. And there's not very many places that recognize that because everybody's into their stovepipes. And I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I look forward to maybe talking to you some about that.
Well, as you probably know, I'm the new kid on the council, and I'm 73 years old. And that makes your, that makes your point. I've been professor of philosophy. I'm also retired. I've had TAs, graduate students, TAing for me, and because I teach this stuff in my classes, they're forced to read up on reincarnation, controlled studies with mediums, near-death experience, and so forth. A number of them have told me that they would love to get into this and study it and do dissertation on it, but it would be a career killer for them to associate with me in the department. I think that is a powerful reason we're not getting young people, because it's a career ruiner for them to be interested in this stuff. And I don't know what we can do about it. I feel we're at a tipping point. How much more data, do we need before? but I felt we were at that tipping point, 10, 15 years ago too. So I don't know.
Thank you.